Why is it that you get up in the morning? Why do you make yourself go to work? Why? Why? It's such a big concept for such a small word. It's only 3 letters. We only have 30 minutes in this episode, but we're going to do our best. Welcome to another episode of The Good, Bad, and Ugly of Business. I'm your host, Catryn Becker, and it is my immense honor and pleasure to talk to so many incredible people to figure out what they've learned in their life and career that has made them so successful. Because behind every successful person, there are failures, there are wrong turns, there are places where we're spinning our wheels because we got stuck, but all of these guests have made it through. And if you're feeling like any of those situations, then keep listening because this is exactly where you need to be. My guest today has so much incredible backstory. We've had so much fun before we even started recording. Can't wait to bring that fun energy to you as well. Her name is Anita Henderson, and she's the founder and president of The Right Image Consulting, where she is your author midwife, helping you to bring your stories and dreams to the page, bringing you that legacy that every one of us so richly deserves. Anita, welcome to the show.
Catryn, that was great. Good to be here. Good to be here. Thanks.
Absolutely. I am so glad to have you. So just to kind of bring in the listeners a little bit, we have a little pre-talk ahead of time about, what's kind of on each of our hearts to talk about in our time together. And when we hit on the why, you really lit up. So of course we have to dig into that. But before we do, tell everyone a little bit more what you do with Right Image Consulting.
Well, I am the author's midwife. I am an author coach, and I guide professional C-suite executives and seasoned entrepreneurs through the process to write, publish, and leverage their books that they use for business. So they're using book publishing as a marketing strategy, and I and my team help them through every aspect of that, from content creation to editing to design and marketing and the whole 9 yards. So from concept to completion, we help them get it done so that they can realize bestseller status, award-winning status, get paid more to speak, get more clients, whatever their goals are. And I absolutely love it.
It's for those of listening who haven't written a book yet, and those who maybe have just done one or two. It's a huge thing, and I don't know if it's just from school and being forced to write about things we don't want to write about, and being judged and graded on like, oh, this sentence structure or whatever. But it seems like it's this like big boulder. At least it was for me writing my first book. I think I wrote like 17 iterations before I finally even
Well,
landed on the story I wanted to tell.
yeah. The biggest part, I think, of writing a book for non-writers, and that's most of my clients are not professional writers. One of the biggest parts is revisions. People
Mm.
never count on revisions. When they think that the first draft is it, let's go to print. We don't do that. There's a whole process. And typically, our process at Write Your Life takes about 9 to 12 months,
Mm.
which, with everything I mentioned in terms of writing and revisions and editing and all of that, is really not bad at all. When you think about the fact that a lot of my clients come to me and say, Anita, I've been trying to write my book for 5 years. And I tell them, 5 years, really? Okay, I got you. Within a year, by this time next year, you will be a published author.
Mm.
So it's revisions that are the huge part of it. But then, of course, you have to start from the right point. You have to have some strategy when you approach book writing. You don't just jump into it and say, oh, I'm an expert at XYZ. That's what I'm going to write my book about. And you just take off writing. I mean, there's some stuff that goes into it. You need to know who you're writing for. Who's your ideal reader?
Yeah.
You need to know what they should get out of the book. You need to know why, speaking of your why you're writing the book in the first place. What do you want to get out of it? And as we walk through all of that, that's sort of the strategic approach we bring to book publishing. So we focus on strategy for books. We focus on the story, right?
Hmm.
For books. And we definitely focus on the structure so that your book is structured in a way that tells your story, gets your point across, and serves your reader so that they already know what to do next. And hopefully that is to work more closely with you as the author.
Mm. You know, obviously you're such a great storyteller yourself because you brought the why back in, made it so much easier for me to make that transition. So tip of the hat to you. Much appreciated.
It's what I do.
Well, and even before even getting into that, you mentioned 9 months to a year. That's how long it takes to have a baby,
And
from
that's why I'm known
conception
as
to
the author's
completion.
midwife.
Yeah, and it's really lovely to think about, and especially if you think about it in terms of creating life.
Yes.
The first part's a lot of fun. You're having a good time, you're feeling great. And then maybe there's the morning sickness of like, oh, doubts, can I actually do this? And then I could even see the revisions being that last trimester, because any mother listening knows that the last trimester is the most tedious, and you're like, when is this baby gonna come?
Oh my God. My clients go through all of that. It's exciting at first. Oh my gosh. We do a VIP day, a full day where we lay the foundation and do all the stuff. Everybody's excited. Oh my gosh, I can't wait to go off and write. I'm super duper excited. We also do within the process something called beta readers or test readers. And I liken that to showing your ultrasound
Mm,
to some people, right? So this is sort of, it's not the rough draft, but it's not the perfect finished draft either. But you're showing it to test readers so that they can give you some feedback. So that's kind of like your ultrasound that you're sharing with people.
yeah.
But between that point and finished product, it's a lot of revisions. And I tell my authors by the time we're done, you're going to be up to here reading this book enough already. You're going to be saying to me, get this thing out of me, right? I'm so over this. Like, I just want it to be finished. And then when we finally do finish and it looks pretty and that crazy Word document you started with actually looks like a book that you can hold in your hand and share with someone else.
Mhm.
I've had many clients cry. They're
Mm.
teary-eyed. They're like, "Oh my God, we actually made a book together." And so, yeah, it is kind of like giving birth. It's beautiful.
Yeah. And there's probably lots of things that if we overlaid it with the thought of, pregnancy, that there's probably a lot of things in this world that are like that. And
Yeah.
isn't that kind of lovely of just that concept of all this bringing something new into the world?
Well, it's the concept of creation, right? We're creative beings.
Yeah.
Whatever our work is, right? As humans, we create. We're constantly evolving. We're constantly imagining what's next, what's more for me, what more can I add to this world that I live in? And so we're always creating. And that creative process is very much, overlaid with, actually giving birth and carrying an idea or thought around with you until you add a little something more to it. And then you add something else and it gets bigger and bigger. And then it manifests in it's a beautiful thing.
Mm. So why do you do this work?
Why do I do this work? I do this work for the love of words. I'm a word nerd from forever back. I love words. I love story. I love seeing that evolution I talked about from someone super thrilled and a little bit nervous at the beginning of the process to actually get their story and their words out to the end where they're holding that book in their hand with teary eyes. For them, that's why I do it. For me, I do it because I have a passion for travel. And
Mm.
my why for doing my business at all is so that I have the freedom of time and just the freedom to explore the world. I absolutely love to travel. And unfortunately, travel is not free. So it actually costs money. And so that's really kind of the personal, very personal. And, we can push it to the back. That's inside baseball mostly. But for me, I do it so that I have the freedom of time and just the ability to travel at will. I absolutely love that. I talk about it in my book that I had a conversation with a coach many years ago. We were in a group setting and he was going through this whole thing with everybody in the group. Oh, what's your why? What's your why? Why do you do your business and all of this? He was asking everybody. And, everyone's answer is personal. There are no wrong answers except the lie you tell yourself. But no one's answer is wrong if that's really their answer. And so everybody's like, oh, I'm doing this to be an example to my kids or to leave a legacy or to impact the community. And all of that was wonderful. And he got to me and I said, oh, well, I'm doing my business because I absolutely love to travel and it gives me time freedom and, I can charge and earn as much as I want to as, an entrepreneur. It's up to me. He says, okay, well, you want to travel. Well, then what? Don't you want to like build wells in Africa and help children read and do all these things? And I'm like, that's not exactly why. Like, if I find an opportunity to do that, that's wonderful, sure. But I want to travel. I consider myself a citizen of the world and I want to experience this beautiful world that I've been placed in. So that's why.
Mm,
And he just kept nudging me. It was like my answer just wasn't good enough for him. He went on and on and on until he just got sick of me. He was like, okay, Anita, if that's all you got, that's all you got. And I had to sit with that and think, is my why wrong? Like, am I doing this is it
mm,
too selfish? Because
yeah.
suggested that it was. And I thought, well, everything we do is for us. Everything. Even if it also benefits other people, and often it does, it's really for us to feel good,
Mhm.
to feel satisfied, to feel as though we're contributing, to be happy. At the core, we're all doing everything we do for ourselves.
And if you kind of take that back, then if you're doing the things for yourself, you're going to be better at leading the people that you're serving.
I agree. You will, because you'll be also helping them understand that they should be doing things for themselves.
Right.
And it's not to say that that's the main thing. I think that is the foundation, and we build upon that because if we're not satisfied and if we're not enjoying what we do, we're not going to do it well,
Yeah.
period. We'll
Yeah.
do it out of obligation. We will do it out of frustration. We do it out of trying to please or appease or get approval from others. And
Mhm.
that's not the reason we should be doing it. We should be doing it for our own satisfaction. And the bonus is that someone else gets to benefit from our work.
Yeah. And it kind of brings up an interesting thing. And like you, I love words and I love dissecting kind of the traditional meaning that people ascribe to it because
Yeah.
it doesn't always align for me once I kind of break it down. But I think of like, well, what would be something that's selfish? Is it doing something that's going to be detrimental to another person? Is that what makes it selfish?
Mm.
I don't
I
know.
don't, yeah, I don't know. I think we consider selfishness when you only think of yourself. You only think of yourself. I think because we live in a world where there are other people, 9 times out of 10, if not 10 times out of 10, our efforts and our actions affect someone else.
Mm,
It doesn't have to be in a negative way.
sure.
So we have to keep that in mind, right? The words that we speak. Someone's listening. So you have to, in some way, keep that in our appropriate things to say
Yeah.
and behaviors.
Yeah.
So I think we get saddled with this concept of selfishness. Um, from a societal perspective, when we do put ourselves first, right? Which doesn't mean we don't care about other people. It's
Right.
just that some of us understand that we really are doing this for ourselves. It goes back to the common reference to your airplane, things like put your mask on first before you help someone else. You're better able to help others when you've got that oxygen on your own face,
Yeah. And
right?
how interesting is that they have to tell us that over and over and over again? It's not
Right.
a
And
message we can hit just once.
no, it's not. And some of it, you can think about the good reason why they have to tell us that is because sometimes our human nature immediately goes to helping others. Let me help you put your mask on first, not thinking that, oh my gosh, and then I'm running out of oxygen. I can't even really assist you properly because I'm about to pass out.
Right.
So when we put ourselves in a position that we have met all of our own needs, we're better able to help others and be a huge contributor to society in general.
Mm. I not again, not that anyone's why is wrong, but I think I resonate with yours so much because it is kind of at your core, Whereas, you know, I've been in different situations where there've been activities of like, what's your why? And, you know, I've got kids, I've got a husband, but they're not my why. I love them no matter what. That's never going to change, but that's not good. What's going to make me wake up in the morning to do a specific thing.
Yes, agreed, right? You choose your thing because it satisfies you.
Yeah.
Your family gets to benefit from that because you're a happy mom, a happy wife. You have some wins that you can say, hey, I did this today. Or I had a great podcast interview, or whatever it was you did that was great. They get to see you be enthusiastic and passionate about what you do. That's sort of the vapors that they get to feel. But you do what you do because it satisfies you.
And it doesn't, it just, as you said, with the vapors that the kids pick up on it, you know, I had a conversation, my daughter is 10 and she's going to be in her last year of elementary school. And we mentioned something, we were just having some random conversation about standing out. And I was like, you know, do you think that's a good thing? And she's like, no. I was like, really? Why not? And she went into this whole very eloquent speech about how at this stage in her life, she needs to fit in because she doesn't want to be picked on.
Mm,
And how she's kind of adapting. And I felt like I love that she felt comfortable enough to say it, first of all, and had the words to say it, to express herself.
yeah.
And I think if I wasn't living my truth and I wasn't being able to speak out, she wouldn't. Maybe she would, maybe she wouldn't. But in that moment, it felt like this is, you know, a really, it goes both ways. You know, it's very symbiotic between.
Good for her. That's big girl stuff.
Oh,
That's
I know.
big girl stuff.
I was so proud. It's like, yes, that's my girl.
Yeah, just to realize that at this point in my life, I want this. I know, Mom, you've taught me that, I should, you know, be my own person and da 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 da. But I feel like I'm moving into this, like I want to fit in with everybody else kind of phase right now. And let her
Yeah.
know it's a phase. There will
Yeah.
be a time when she won't want to fit in.
Yeah. And I was like, I support you. I support you in that. Um,
Mhm.
so yeah. And you know, I love also that you brought in that it's not just the travel, but that it's the freedom to travel, because I felt like when I was in my W-2 job that I had the money to travel, but not the free time freedom to
Yeah.
travel.
Yeah, that's the balancing act, right? Whatever it is you want to do, in life or experience or have, it usually costs money. That's the world we live in. And there is this sort of spectrum, like we have the time, but not the money, or we have the money and not the time.
Yeah.
And entrepreneurship for me has been the opportunity to have both. I worked corporate, and in the 27 years I've been in business, I've been in back to corporate twice and then out again when I finally realized I was a square peg trying to fit myself into a round hole. Um, and it was a drag to get 2 weeks of vacation. Like, are you kidding me? That's one trip.
Right.
Like, I can't live on 2 weeks vacation. That's not enough for me. Yeah, I had the money at the time. Sure, I had a consistent, salary and that kind of thing. But when I realized that the freedom of being my own boss, pricing my own services, deciding who I get to work with, choosing my clients well, and understanding that I can charge as much as I want to, as long as I'm adding value to my clients and that they get out of their engagement with me what they expect.
Mm.
Sky's the limit. So, my last corporate job, I had to decide that I was retiring from corporate because years prior, I was like, oh, well, if this entrepreneur thing, if this business thing doesn't work out, I can always go back and get a job. That was sort of my safety net, which, what was I thinking? Um, but I had to let that go and decide that I'm retiring from corporate work and I'm not going back, and that I'm going to make my business venture work. And that was, I don't know, 15 years ago.
Mm.
And awesome.
You know, there's an interesting kind of concept that I hear floated around, and that's the idea of burn the boats.
Mm,
And I hear both sides of this um, conversation, and I can see both ways. And so for those people who listening who not familiar with the concept, it's basically there was an army, I think in Greece, that came to this island, and the captain burned the boats down because the only way to succeed was to, overcome the other force. That there was no safety net, there was no way back, there was no, option B. So, but I can see both sides of yes and
Yeah.
like those are really good boats. Like, why would I burn them? That's a resource.
What if I need that later?
Yeah, exactly. Like those,
Yeah.
that's a useful thing to have. So
Yeah, we like
what's
to
your
have a safety
mindset?
net. We like to have a safety net. And I think, every situation is different. So we want to use our smarts here. But we also have to think about why we're holding on to certain things anyway,
Mm,
right? Um, and sometimes it just boils down to that fear. It just boils down to fear. If you're just afraid that you can't make your business venture work, then you're going to always seek the safety net, whatever your safety net is.
mm,
If, on the other hand, you find ways to build yourself up and value even the small wins in your day and in your life, and know that if I can do that, I can do the next great thing.
yeah.
Or maybe you look at other successful people doing what you want to do and say, let me study them and find out how they did what they did,
It's
you
like
know?
listening to this podcast.
Listening to this podcast. So many opportunities, right? So many
Yeah.
examples. So there's a place and time for the safety net. And then there's also a time where you need to just let it go. Just like you would tell, I mean, you look at nature. I'm a nature girl. So you look at birds and you've got the chicks in the nest. And at some point, when those little babies don't start flying, mama will push them out.
Mhm.
It seems harsh. She's got to push them out literally of the safety net, the safety nest, so that they can fly. And sometimes we have to force ourselves out of our safe space so we can see what we're really made of and what we can accomplish.
That's so beautifully put. So you mentioned, kind of last question before we wrap up. You mentioned that you'd been in corporate, you went to work, you went back to corporate, and then you retired. What, if anything, can you pinpoint in mindset wise or in your sort of constitution was the difference between the first time you went to work for yourself and this current time?
Well, I would say, and I talk about this in my book, Becoming the Minimalist Entrepreneur, and that is that I had to become my own best advisor.
Mm,
I had to listen to Anita. I had to stop listening to all the voices and outside of me. I even had to put my internal little chatter in its place because we all have that. The
mhm,
little side of you that says, I don't know, it's scary. You don't have enough. You don't know enough. You don't know enough people, whatever. I had to like put that one on the back burner and say, but you do enough to take another step. You
mhm.
do know enough because you've learned from what you've been through in the past.
Right.
And you know enough to do one thing and one thing and one thing. And so that really speaks to mindset and
Mhm.
it speaks to confidence. I had to grow my confidence so that I could be my own best advisor, so that I could rely on Anita more than I relied on anyone else. Like the bottom line is me. I could get 1,000 points of advice, but I've got to look at what works for me. And I think as business owners, there's gurus all over the place
Yeah.
and they all tell you different things. And it really boils down to, sure, receive the information as you will, but you have to trust yourself, trust your gut, become your own best advisor, and do what's best for you.
Yeah, there's definitely a level of discernment. And I think, in particularly, I think it's challenging for people coming from the corporate world into entrepreneurship because when you're in corporate, there is a very clear chain of command and usually very clear instructions. There is a written job description, of what you are meant to be doing. And so I think it can be very challenging once you leave that and all of a sudden, there's so many different voices coming at you and
Yeah.
we've kind of been trained or programmed to listen to them. Like, okay, well, they're above me in the, perceived chain of command. They've done this longer. They're making more money. They're more successful, whatever it is, I need to listen. And then someone else comes and they're like, oh, that's not exactly what this person, what? How do I do both?
It's confusing. Yeah, yeah. And sometimes you try things. Look, I've tried all the things, right? I've done the funnels, I've had a membership group, I've had an online course, I've had a business partnership. I had two other business partners years ago in a different venture. I've hosted a podcast, I've done an internet TV show. Like I've done all the things. And it was good for me that I tried it, right? It was good that
Yeah.
I was afflicted. It's good that I tried those things. If for no other reason than to know that I don't have to do them all and I don't have to do them all at the same time, and that some of them just are not for me.
Mm, yeah, that's so beautiful. I could talk to you for ages. I really, really enjoy your energy and your wisdom, and just there's a level of calmness that you bring, which I guess being the author midwife, you don't want your midwife to be chaotic.
No, you don't.
So
It's been a
thank
pleasure,
you.
Catryn. Thanks for having me.
Oh my gosh. I mean, thank you for just, sharing all of this with all of us. I really, really appreciate it. Before we wrap up, just can you please share what are the kind of the ideal clients that you work with? What are some of the commonalities that they have, since you do have the freedom to be choosy with who you,
Oh,
what do you look for?
oh, I love my clients. They are super smart people. They have typically an established brand or business. They are C-suite executives, and usually on those in the professional space, they are looking at retirement within about 5 years.
Mhm.
And they want to get that book written now before they retire. For my entrepreneurial clients, they have been in their business for several years, I would say at least 5 years. They've developed and established something, a process, a system, a methodology, an approach, and they want to share that with the world.
Mm.
Um, they're smart, they know their stuff, and I like them just a little bit intimidated about the writing process because that's where I come in. And I want them to trust me because I know my stuff and I've got a
Yeah.
great system to get them an amazing book. So they're excited and they're ready. They're committed to finishing what they start. And when we do finish, it is always incredible.
Mm. Well, you guys heard it here. If you feel like you fit into one of those categories, definitely reach out to Anita. How is the best way that they can do that?
Well, you can find me on LinkedIn. I absolutely hang out there all the time. Or you can visit my website, writeyourlife.net. And we can talk, schedule a book strategy session with me, and we'll see what you got, what your ideas are.
Book the book strategy.
There you go.
I will have all of those links in the show description as well. So for those of you who are listening or watching, please just scroll down so that you can find those links and connect with Anita. Anita, thank you so very much.
My pleasure. Thanks, Catryn.
And to the listeners, I'd love to hear what your takeaways are from this episode. For me, it's that the answers are already within you, and it's about how we connect deeply within ourselves, and then we're able to connect with the outer world and have people like Anita in our lives to help bring what we have learned from that inner to the outer. Thank you so much for being here. Until next time, take care, everyone.